You, whether you think that it's just going to be status quo as usual, since you have a Democrat in the White House and you have a Democratic Senate, but a Republican House of Representatives. And certain things that I found out in this election process, I want to share with you and hear your views on it as well, is that some of the same things that people were saying about the historic election of the first African American president were not going to hold true in 2012. That novelty, if you will, had worn off, and that there was no sense of enthusiasm to get out and vote. But as we saw yesterday, with the long lines in Florida and Ohio and other places to vote, which is inexcusable in this day and age, 2012, where people were standing in line for hours to vote, which should be criminal in and of itself, in that you have a 21st century election process where we can do most of everything now, seems like, in an electronic way, but yet voting seems to still be an issue, even 12 years later after the Florida case of Bush versus Gore, and with President Bush winning over Al Gore with only 500 or so votes. And yet it's still a problem in places like Florida. And that needs to be fixed, as President Obama said yesterday in his victory speech. So hopefully we're not going to be revisiting this every 4 years where we're waiting on Florida. I'm not even sure right now. I don't think Florida has even been called for the president yet, which we know he's been leading ever since late last night. And, of course, his electoral total and his popular vote is going to increase when that comes in as well. So, again, the number here is 212-650-6903. And let's take a look at some of the issues surrounding yesterday's win for President Obama. And one of the things that I found really interesting is, again, when they talk about lack of enthusiasm and that Democrats were not going to turn out to vote in the same way that Republicans were going to, you find that the black votership, the black electorate was out in record numbers, and that the Latino vote was out in record numbers for President Obama. And they keep saying how President Obama and Latinos were going to clash because of his broken promise, that's their words, about immigration, but yet that hasn't been the case. In fact, he increased his votership from the Latino community. And, of course, the black electorate, again, went for him in huge numbers as well. And they stayed out there. They stayed out there till 10, 11 o'clock, some even beyond midnight in the early voting states to vote for President Obama. So I think that when they talk about how close the election was supposed to be, but yet when you had such motivation to get out and vote because people were talking about how there were going to be restrictions to voting, you had to show ID, and in states like Pennsylvania, Texas, Florida, where they went to court over these issues, that people felt motivated to get out and voice their opinion about how displeased they were, and that's a relatively calm term, about how they were trying to limit the access to voting. And I think that what happened is you see a lot of people get angry about that and say it's not going to go down this time. Now, regardless of whether your politics favor President Obama or not, they feel like this is not going to happen, and you're not going to not allow us to vote, regardless of who we feel is the best candidate for the job. So, with that said, again, there were huge numbers of black voters who turned out for President Obama, and even in spite of the close margins that they had in North Carolina and other states, particularly in Ohio, but the the major urban areas, which is a testament to the type of campaign that President Obama ran, is that he knew how to target his voters and go directly to the people that he needed in terms of getting the right people out to vote in the largest populated areas, which tended to be the urban areas. Of course, Mitt Romney got a lot of votes throughout the country where the vote was 100% for Mitt Romney, but he had less populated areas, like in the rural type areas. And it was what some people are calling, I guess, a spanking for Mitt Romney. And we know now that, his strategy, Mitt Romney's strategy of trying to expand the electoral map was unsuccessful. Looking at it a day later, of course, thinking that he could gain in places where Obama had already been successful in 2008, like in Virginia, like in Florida, like in Ohio, Wisconsin. It just didn't work. And trying to cut down in the margins, I guess he did that in some areas, but overall it just didn't work at all. It was totally unsuccessful. And what the Obama campaign did was completely effective in that regard, because when you look at how President Obama and his team and his legions of volunteers were able to turn out their vote, was a testament to how the Democratic Party and, of course, the campaign of Obama for America really got their base out. And the issues of fairness in the income disparities and taxes and employment and all of those things really drove a lot of people out to the polls. And I think a lot of the unfairness that people saw happening and a lot of the personal attacks against President Obama motivated a lot of people to come out and vote as well. Latinos, of course, people say historically vote conservative, particularly in Florida or Arizona. But in this case, you see how immigration for a lot of people and the negative talk of how Republicans viewed immigration and their solutions or policies for immigration reform just didn't resonate and connect with Latino voters. And in fact, it probably didn't connect with a large majority of the electorate, which is why you see voter turnout in the Latino community increase, and the general white vote, although it's still large, is seemingly to decrease each year and with every election. And so I think that poses a problem for a large part of the Republican Party and how they're going to go forward. But I'd like to focus on not only the problems and issues with the Republican Party, but some of the things that the Democrats need to address going into a second term. So I want to remind everyone that the number here is 212-650-6903. You're listening to Legalese with Tony Johnson on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. So 2 weeks ago, I had Professor Fred Harris and Professor Terry Smith talk about some of the problems they felt were, well, I don't want to characterize them as problems, some of the issues that they felt that Obama was lacking in his first term, and some of the things that they felt that he could do better in addressing in a potential second term. And one of those things was addressing specifically black unemployment and issues surrounding the black community, since, as you saw last night, such a large number of people in the African-American community voted for him. So I guess the question is there some type of repayment that needs to happen from President Obama's administration, or as a way of rewarding the black community for coming out and helping to put President Obama back in the White House for another 4 years? And I know a lot of people feel like he didn't address anything racial per se, except for maybe that quote unquote beer summit in the early part of his first term, that first year. But what has he done substantively for the African American community since he's been in office? There's that issue of whether his general policies will have an effect on all communities, of course, including the black and brown communities. But is that really practical, or is that even a real reality? Is that something that's really happening? Can these policies on a general level affect change in the African American community where it's sorely needed? So I guess that's one of the things that people are going to be looking at. I've already had people contact me about that already, wondering if now that he has a second term and he doesn't have to worry about re-election ever again or running for any elected office ever again, will he be the kind of person that they thought he was going to be in 2008? And will they see a different type of President Obama in 2013? So I guess all of those questions remain, to be seen, and whether we'll get an answer. But my feeling is that if President Obama doesn't become more aggressive and fight even harder against the forces that are trying to prevent us from moving to a more equal society in terms of pay and employment and social issues, then I know there's going to be a huge, I suspect there will be a huge backlash against President Obama and his legacy, because these 4 years are going to determine what his legacy is going to be. Of course, the health care law that he passed, the Affordable Care Act, was a huge milestone in his presidency. But now people are talking about, can the next 4 years be something that President Obama can point to as being so historic and such creating such change for good, that his face could be, the next logical face on Mount Rushmore with the other 4 presidents. So if you think that's the case, I'd like to hear what your opinion is. If you don't think that's the case, if you think that President Obama is just going to be status quo and keep things in a status quo situation because he has a Tea Party House of Representatives and he has a majority in the Senate, but not quite enough to move things forward without having to work with the Republican senators. So we'll see how that turns out, whether or not he can move this country forward in a way that's more equal and fair for everyone, which I personally believe that's where his heart is and that's where he'd like to go. But of course, when politics are involved, it's all about self and what can I get out of it. And if that's the case, then we could see a repeat of the last 4 years. And nobody wants to see that. I'm sure not even Republicans want to see that, which is why they fought so hard to keep him out of office for the next 4 years. So I think that, I'd like to say President Obama had a very well-run campaign with all types of coalitions coming together, which a lot of media and pundits said would not happen in 2012, with the gay community. You have Latinos, blacks, you have working people, all come together. And a number of progressive and liberal white folks come together and run a very strong campaign and hammer Mitt Romney about his issues regarding Medicare and Medicaid, and how his budget and tax policy would actually hurt the country, and how running a company is completely different than running a country. And because of that, we need to find out more about what President Obama's next term is going to look like. A lot of people said that President Obama never really laid out what his second term was going to look like. But, I mean, if you listen to what he said, he kept repeating it over and over and over again. And it's about fairness and having people at the top pay a little bit more to contribute to where we are as a country right now, to contribute to the deficit. And, of course, he's looking at trying to cut spending, although, of course, a lot of Republicans don't believe that. But where is President Obama going to cut spending? Is he going to cut entitlement programs, the programs that we commonly refer to as Medicare and Medicaid? Are those programs that he could potentially look at to cut in his next 4 years going to affect seniors? And I take him at his word that it's not going to. But when you have politics, if it was just left up to him, then I would say yes. But since it's not, again, we have to wait and see how willing the other side is going to work with him and find some kind of way of compromise. I mean, I think that's what everybody is looking for, some sort of compromise, somewhere people can meet in the middle. And I think with a second term and not having to worry about reelection, that's what a lot of people are banking on, that President Obama really come at these people hard in Congress and get a lot of the things done that he needs to get done. Again, one of those things being tax reform and entitlement reform and immigration reform. And, of course, the economy, getting people back to work and moving our economy forward to the levels where it was right before George Bush took office. George Bush took office in 2000. So he has a lot to do in the next 4 years, and I think a lot of people wanted to give him a second opportunity to try to finish the job that he started. And when you think that people were trying to distract us from keeping our eye on what's really important by attacking him personally, talking about his birth certificate, trying to distract us by trying to keep us from voting, all kinds of issues that we feel were just red herrings so that we wouldn't see a clear path to victory as we did yesterday. And I say we because I voted for President Obama, and I support his vision for the country. And I think that even if you don't, that people can find a way to compromise and do the things that we need to do to get people back to work and to get our economy back to where it needs to be, to address the housing crisis, which people are still suffering through, and all kinds of other issues in terms of tax policies as well. So, you're listening to WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. This is Tony Johnson with Legalese. One of the things that we see happening is in this election is Paul Ryan, the vice presidential candidate on the Republican side. Clearly, that wasn't a big a game changer as the Republicans or Mitt Romney had hoped it would be. In fact, President Obama ended up winning Wisconsin, which is Paul Ryan's home state. And although he won re-election for his congressional seat, I mean, it didn't really encourage or bring about the kind of enthusiasm. Initially, it did, as all vice presidential picks do. You know, there's that initial burst of enthusiasm and excitement for the nominee, the vice presidential nominee. But in this case, it didn't do anything. It didn't do anything to help it out. Well, or I should say very little. And in this case, we see that having someone who had a budget that was going to really almost reconfigure Medicare and Medicaid and affect seniors in a way that people felt would be detrimental to the country and no way of paying for it was a huge flaw for Republicans. And the fact that they didn't have enough of a diverse electorate of people voting for them seemed to be an issue too. So if that's the case, I mean, what kind of model are they going to follow going forward in 2016? But, I mean, I guess that's for them to worry about at that point. I mean, there needs to be some kind of minority outreach. And some people say, well, I don't really care whether they do or not because I'm a tried and true Democrat and I want to just keep the White House and the Congress in Democratic hands. So whatever they're going to do is not really a concern to me. But it is to some degree because that just means that more and more of the country is going to stay sharply divided as it is right now between those people who we feel like is a party that's growing older, is growing whiter, and is growing more concerned about affluent Americans than middle class or working or poor Americans. And you can see that from the comment that Mitt Romney made that regarding the 47% of Americans at a fundraiser where he was taped secretly and made those comments. So some people say that might have hurt his chances. I don't know if it did or not because I don't think that was really any news. I mean, people already knew where he felt for years about trying to protect the interests of corporations and people with high earners and high incomes. So if that's the case, then there was a stark difference between what President Obama was trying to do and what Mitt Romney was trying to do. And if you see that, you see how Mitt Romney in his final weeks of the campaign really tried to co-opt what President Obama was advocating in his campaign rallies. It's almost as if Mitt Romney tried to embrace exactly what President Obama was doing and move from the hard right where he was during the primaries and move to the center for him, which would make him more likable, which would gain him greater appeal to the electorate by not advocating such hard right views. Since the country is I guess what they're saying is the country is more in the middle. They have more moderate views, and it seemed like he tried to embrace that. You can see that in the last debate that President Obama and Mitt Romney had, where it seems as if Mitt Romney tried to agree with almost every position that President Obama had. And if that's the case, he really tried to present himself as no different, that he was not a radical choice against President Obama. But obviously from yesterday's election, people didn't see it that way. You know, they talk about different issues regarding, the two senators that lost that in the Midwest that talked about rape, Todd Akin and Richard Murdoch, and how their incendiary comments made national headlines and what some people are saying cost them those seats when they thought that those states were going to remain in Republican-controlled hands, and they didn't. And now it helped the Senate gain those 2 extra seats. And, you can have a respectful disagreement about abortion rights and the right to life, but when it comes to a volatile and a personal issue like rape, I don't see why people are having any types of debate about that. Like President Obama said recently on one of the late night talk shows, rape is rape, and why are people trying to politicize that is just nuts to me. The fact that you have people on the right trying to defund Planned Parenthood or talk about trying to limit or eliminate contraception for women at the workplace. It was a huge issue. You can tell from the numbers that women went for Obama in a huge way. And, people suspect a lot of it had to do with the really ugly comments and wildly offensive statements that Republicans were making about, the women's right to choose, and also about contraception and her ability to make choices for herself regarding her own body. And people heard those comments. It resonated with people in a very negative way, and I think that it showed that party and a lot of those candidates in the worst light possible. And I don't see how anybody would want to have that kind of mindset and people with that kind of thinking making policy for the next 4 and possibly 8 years. Again, you can have a fundamental disagreement where we can respect each other's position and thoughts on the right to life, but some issues, again, in topics of rape and how they made such idiotic comments about it, I don't see how anybody could support that. But apparently a lot of people did, because some of those races were close, although those candidates ended up losing. So I think it all turned out for the best in the end, and it really showed exactly where people stood on these types of issues and what we needed to do as a country to really address it and to move beyond it. Now, there were some ballot initiatives as well yesterday that several states were voting on. A few were same-sex marriage and also legalizing marijuana. And I believe, from what I read, is that Maine and Maryland voted in favor of same-sex marriage. And there were other states, I'm not really sure which ones, don't have that information in front of me, that did actually not only legalize medical marijuana, but legalize just marijuana, period, for personal use, which is kind of odd in my opinion, but it just shows, when these issues are local and left to, local community to vote for it, I mean, anything can happen. So I'm not advocating one position or another on that. I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. These states who are in the Midwest, I think Colorado is definitely one of them. And, in terms of same-sex marriage, I know that it was a huge issue that Republicans tried to pit the black church against that issue and try to make it a moral one, which for some people, and of course I respect that, is definitely a moral one. And trying to get black preachers to come out against it. I know that President Obama has evolved his opinion on it, and Ben Jealous, who's head of the NAACP, has come out in support of same-sex marriage and really put together a strong coalition with people like Reverend Al Sharpton and others to try to make sure that these ballot initiatives passed in their respective states. And I think it did. I think in the 4 states where this was up for a vote, I think at least 3 of them it passed. I'm not really clear about the 4th one, but I believe it passed in maybe all 4 of those states. And it just shows where, as people remember, in 2004 when John Kerry ran, that was a huge wedge issue in the Midwest where a lot of states were amending their state constitutions to ban same-sex marriage. But now, when you have this in 2012 in the general election, it seems that those states passed it. So I think the country, from just those votes, is moving more toward tolerance, if anything. Maybe not clear acceptance, but at least a tolerance of same-sex marriage in their states, which I think is a good thing in terms of just being more agreeable to different committed lifestyles, more so than what we've traditionally known, and to legalize civil unions and allow marriage for people who are in committed relationships. So, with that said, we want to move forward and see what's going to happen for President Obama and the Democrats in 2013 and beyond. And if people out there feel as if he's going to address their concerns. He has a second term now. He put all of his political capital in trying to reform healthcare. So what's the next item on his agenda? You know, is it going to be the economy? Is it going to be immigration reform? Is it going to be tax reform? Is he going to reform entitlements? I mean, what do people think should be his first priority going back into office? We always heard from Mitt Romney what his first priority was going to be, which was to repeal Obamacare, as he used to say. But since we know that's not going to happen, and I don't believe it was going to happen regardless of whether he was elected president or not, he just didn't have the votes to repeal that law. But let's see what's going to happen moving forward in the new administration of President Obama. So, again, this is Tony Johnson, and you're listening to Legalese. This is WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. And if you like, if you'd like to join the conversation, please call at 212-650-6903. So let's talk about the fallout that it seems like the Republicans are dealing with today, a day after the election, and where people are blaming themselves, and just see where we are with trying to figure out what the Republicans are going to do in terms of how they're going to address their party issues going forward in the next year. And that means whether or not they're going to have a greater outreach toward minorities, whether they're going to include more issues that are more moderate, or more views that are more moderate, whether they're going to shed this image of just being for corporations and high net worth individuals, or whether they're going to really compete toe-to-toe with the Democratic Party on trying to lift up the middle class, get people back to work, and revitalize our economy. And we'll see if they do that. I mean, we talk about this every 4 years. This is the second time that the Republicans have lost the White House, and they talked about that after the election of Barack Obama in 2008, and how John McCain and Sarah Palin were going to their loss was going to be examined by Republicans to see whether or not they could broaden their coalition to include more people and more diverse people to compete with Democrats. But 4 years later, it doesn't seem as if that's the case. And now going forward into 2013, I mean, I just get the sense that they're on this track that they're being held hostage by the Tea Party, and no real change is going to happen between now and 2016, at least for them. And they talk about, having, Latino rising stars in their party like Marco Rubio or Senator-elect Cruz out of Texas, or the governor in the Southwest, Martinez, but I don't really see how that's going to be the case. 3 people are not going to change a whole mindset of people. So this has to be a complete overhaul of their party issues. Just like the Democrats had to do when they lost the White House back in 2000, and figure out a way to come back. And it took them about 8 years to do that. And maybe that's what it's going to take for the Republican Party as well to try to figure that out. I mean, but when you have such extreme views in their party, such as, people like Sarah Palin, who calls the re-election of President Obama catastrophic, I mean, there's just no way in the world that if they don't try to moderate those views and try to figure out ways for people like Sarah Palin or Aaron Coulter or Rush Limbaugh to not run their party from a microphone and let more moderate views in their party, it's going to be hard. It's going to be extremely hard for them to figure out a way to come back and try to beat the next nominee, or even 2 years during the congressional midterm elections. So that said, let's take a quick break, and I'll be back, and so we can figure out more about what's happened in yesterday's election, and try to examine some more of the issues of the campaigns. This is Tony Johnson, and you're listening to Legalese.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
If you or someone you know is receiving federal benefits from Social Security, Veterans Affairs, Railroad Retirement Board, Office of Personnel Management, or the Department of Labor, this message is for you. The Treasury Department is phasing out paper check payments and requiring federal benefit recipients to get their money electronically. You can choose to get your payments by direct deposit to a bank, credit union, or to a Direct Express debit MasterCard account. The deadline to switch is March 1st, 2013. If you do not choose a bank or credit union for your direct deposit, your funds will automatically go onto a Direct Express debit MasterCard. If you are already receiving your federal benefit payments by direct deposit, this change will not affect you. For more information, contact your local Social Security Administration office or call 1-800-333-1795. That's 1-800-333-1795.
If you know the symptoms and get the facts, you'll know the signs of a heart attack. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if it sounds familiar, call 911.
Pain in your neck, chest,
arms or jaw,
shortness of breath.
Please tell us more. Cold sweats and nausea, tiredness.
It's time to take it
serious. Back pain, stomach pain, shortness of breath. Cold sweats, nausea, dizziness. If you know the symptoms and heed the signs, you'll be around for a long, long time. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if any sound familiar, call 911.
Learn the song on that could save your life. Get a free download at womenshealth.gov/heart attack.
Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if any sound familiar, call 911. If any sound familiar, call 911.
A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
911.
Are you a singer, a musician, or a producer? Are you looking to record a demo, a song, or an entire album? This is Angela Harden, General Manager of WHCR 90.3 FM, and I'm excited to tell you that you no longer have to travel all the way downtown to record your project. WHCR offers a state-of-the-art recording studio with an experienced engineer. Our studio is affordably priced and conveniently located in the heart of Harlem, right here on the campus of City College. For rates and information, please call 212-650-7147. That's 212-650-7147. Harlem has its own radio station and its own recording studio.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Hello, we're back. You're listening to Tony Johnson and Legalese. This is 90.3 FM, WHCR, the voice of Harlem. And today we're talking about the election of, or the re-election of President Obama. And we're examining some of the issues that went into the campaign on both sides and to try to see what would be President Obama's main thrust of his new administration in 2013 and going forward into the next 4 years. What would be some of his priorities going forward that he talked about on the campaign trail, and whether or not he's going to be able to keep a lot of those promises that he made out there while he was campaigning, or whether people feel as if he needs to focus on their particular issues and needs, particularly in the African American community, since they're the ones, along with a substantial number of Latinos, who helped to reelect him and basically really give President Obama the kind of victory that a lot of people were predicting was going to be a lot closer than it was. And since we know that it was not as close, I know recently I saw, before I came on the air, that the popular vote for President Obama was somewhere approaching 2.5 million votes, or maybe even 3 million votes above where Mitt Romney was. And the percentage was like 50 to 48. And that's still with Florida being out. Because as I talk now to you, before I came on the air, they still hadn't called Florida for President Obama. And but apparently he was able to win without it, although he's still leading in that area. So, I mean, do people feel as if this was a campaign that was, not only well run and effective, but really spoke to the majority of Americans and where they're at in their lives, and whether, this was a strategic effort on the part of the Obama campaign to really target those voters who they needed to turn out to the polls yesterday, and clearly the answer is yes, because he was able to win basically almost in every state that he won in 2008, except for North Carolina and Indiana. But he basically was able to keep the states that he did win, other than those two, and win by a substantial margin. I mean, close to 3 million votes and a substantial number of electoral votes. I mean, at last count, without Florida, he was at 303. And, of course, we know that he only needs 270 to win. And so, now people are looking at, what does the future hold now? Is President Obama going to shake up his cabinet? Are there going to be people leaving the cabinet, which, generally speaking, a lot of people do, and he replaces them? And, will Hillary Clinton stay on for another 4 years as Secretary of State? Will we see any type of dramatic changes going forward in a new Obama term for the next 4 years? And how will he be able to govern when you have such a resistant House of Representatives and people like the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell already releasing a statement that basically says that it's going to be status quo, that unless the president comes to them and basically gives them what they need or what they want, which in their minds is compromise, that nothing is going to get done, and that we'll see a repeat of the last 4 years. But, this is where President Obama's leadership is going to have to come into play. And if we see how people are going to fight him and resist him on every type of major policy reform that he's going to try to put forward, even including a budget, then we'll see whether or not he is going to fight as hard for his agenda as he did for healthcare reform. And he talks about trying to wake up and fight for Americans every day. Believe me, he's going to have that opportunity to do that when we look at all the types of issues that are going to be facing him in a new term. I mean, of course, there's going to be a lot of carryover. The economy is still not where it needs to be, but obviously is moving in the right direction. Employment is headed, or the unemployment rate is actually heading in the right direction, although it ticked up 1/10 of a percentage point. But now it's not going to be a situation where we're going to be looking at high unemployment, hopefully. And he needs to just address these issues going forward and, hopefully find a way to work with Republicans like he did last week during the hurricane, when he and Governor Christie got together to try to provide some immediate and needed relief for people who were severely affected by Hurricane Sandy and in the coastal areas of New Jersey and elsewhere. So, I mean, people are already bashing Governor Christie for praising President Obama and saying how their union last week, their cooperation last week was one of the things that killed Romney's chances to get into the White House, which to me, I don't see how people can come up with that conclusion, because his chances to get into the White House were not as strong as people were saying they were all along. I mean, they hugely underestimated the enthusiasm that people had to get out and vote. The fact that you had people waiting in lines for over 5, 6, 7 hours just to vote tells you that there was strong enthusiasm and excitement to vote for President Obama, and that they were going to do whatever they had to do to make sure that their voice and their vote was heard. And I'm just hoping and praying that in the next election that we're not talking about Florida once again as that state that has a voting issue. Maybe that has to do with the governor, or maybe not. maybe it's the Board of Elections and the way they do things there, but obviously it's not working. And there's no way in 2012, and as we look to 2014 for the midterm elections and 2016 for the next general election, where we should be having to talk about how Florida is still having voting issues, which came to light in the election of George Bush in 2000. So, I mean, I don't see how President Obama is going to overlook a lot of these issues. I mean, I think from his victory speech last night, it seemed as if he felt confident that he was going to be in a position to tackle all of these issues that the country faces, and with the help that he'll get in the Senate. And we can't forget that he's going to have an opportunity to appoint at least one or two more Supreme Court justices. Generally, the president will have his say on those, and they'll be confirmed. Of course, like anything, Republicans can find a way to resist anything that President Obama puts forward. That's gonna be the case, but I'm sure that he'll prevail in the end. And I'm personally interested to see whether or not the prediction of my previous guests, Professor Harris and Professor Smith, will come true in the sense of whether or not President Obama is going to directly address the issues affecting the African American community, or is it going to be another 4 years of not having to address race directly? He has a trickle-down theory about how these broad policies will help lift everyone, including the African American community, but I know there are others out there who feel that he needs to have a more direct and targeted approach toward that community, to our community, and see what he can do to eliminate the high rate of unemployment among black teenagers, disparity in pay, and also, of course, the general unemployment rate. So, again, I want to remind you that we're here on Wednesdays at 4 p.m., 4 to 5, and I have a Facebook page at Tony Johnson Legalese, and you can find me on Twitter at Tony Legalese, or you can email me at legalese@gmail.com. There's all kinds of ways to reach out to me. Give me your feedback. Let me know, what kind of future shows you'd like to hear or what kind of issues you'd like to address. And thank you for listening. And we'll see how President Obama moves forward with the second term. This is Tony Johnson with Legalese, WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
He's our Lord and Savior. Can you feel him? Let him get into you. He's the reason for every breath we take. Let him get into you. How I love him. Yes, I do. Let him get into you. He's the joy, everything I need. Let him get into you. I love him. He's my everything. Let him get into you. He's my peace of mind, all my trying time. Let him get into you. He's the melody in the music, my everything.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Man Up in Harlem is a by men for men ministry that focuses on creating positive changes in the Harlem community through prayer and community service. The group hosts a men's empowerment hour every Wednesday at 7 p.m. in the Polo Grounds Housing Community Room, and a weekly prayer walk every Thursday morning in several locations. At the prayer walk, members pray together in a football-style huddle about community issues. Man Up in Harlem's slogan is "Don't talk about it, be about it." If you'd like to join a prayer walk, meet at 6 a.m. at the 155th subway station for the Polo Grounds House Walk, or at the Dunkin' Donuts at 126 in Amsterdam for the Grand House Walk. For more information, please check out www.manupharlem.org.